Hey everybody, this is Eric Bond. Again, sorry for that delay that we just had. We just resolved our technical issues. But today I'm very pleased to present to you the fourth part of our Write Like an Expert series. So again, for those of you who are new to this series, this is a Beat the GMAT event where we invite top MBA admissions experts to come live and break down the top business schools MBA application essays for this season. We're inviting back a very special guest today, Jeremy Scheinwald, who is the founder of MBA Mission. So many of you were able to catch Jeremy's Harvard Business School event earlier, and he's back today to talk to us about Kellogg. I'll just say a couple quick words about Jeremy before we kick off the presentation. So Jeremy is, again, the founder of MBA Mission, one of the top tier MBA admissions consulting firms in the country. And he has many very interesting experiences. Before MBA Mission, he had a little bit of experience in politics, actually, serving as a speechwriter for the ambassador to Israel, the ambassador of Israel to the United States. So what that means for you, actually, is that this is a guy who has lots of experience crafting compelling essays and writing, and he's of course translated all those skills into his work that he does for his clients today at MBA Mission. So that being said, I'm going to go ahead and turn it over to Jeremy. And Jeremy, welcome. And also, I'll make one more note. Jeremy is a very dedicated person when it comes to his clients. He's calling in from his own vacation today, and he happens to be a little bit sick. So thanks, Jeremy, for making the sacrifice to be with us today.
No, my pleasure, guys. I apologize in advance to those who are online. If you hear some hacking and coughing, I'll do my best to fight through it. Those who are accustomed to other events we've done online could probably already detect a little bit of a gravelly voice and maybe a little bit of a nasal voice. But anyway, we'll fight through it as long as you're patient. I think we'll have a great session. Thanks to Beat the GMAT for welcoming me back. We had a wonderful Harvard Business School session probably about 2 weeks ago. It's available online on our website and on Beat the GMAT's website if you want to check it out. And we're going to talk today about standout Kellogg essays. And I think maybe a brief leaping off point. Eric mentioned that I was a speechwriter, and at MBA Mission we really try to focus on communication. You're going to submit words to the admissions committee. You're going to communicate with them through the written word. And everyone in MBA Mission is a published author first, and that comes from my own heritage as a writer. It doesn't mean that you can create, if you don't have the core experiences, you can create a story through adjectives that's going to help you overcome every obstacle you ever faced. But it does mean that the average applicant can ensure that he or she stands out through effective writing. And again, it's not an adjective contest, but it's identifying strong core experiences and revealing them to the admissions committee through an interesting narrative. So with that, I guess we'll start. So we're going to talk about crafting standout Kellogg essays just on a broad level. Then we'll talk about the Kellogg essays themselves one by one, and then we'll take some questions and answers. So crafting some standout Kellogg essays, just the ground rules here. Excuse me, I'm just getting some water already. The ground rules. I think that people have a tendency to start with this premise that Kellogg is a marketing school, and then they say, well, Kellogg only admits people who emphasize marketing or teamwork because that's the other big buzzword at Kellogg, and the school is not interested in you as a marketing candidate if you're not a marketing candidate, and the school actually sees itself as being far more than quote-unquote, just a marketing school. They've got an excellent healthcare program, which we'll actually have an example of later on, their HEMA program, their Health Enterprise Management program, which has a variety of unique offerings, including global study trips that are tied into the Gates Foundation. They have an amazing real estate program where they've got a real estate lab where you can go work with a real estate firm. They're located in Chicago. a global capital for architecture and real estate. They've got people, think about their crosstown rival, Chicago, for finance, and ironically think about people limit Chicago to finance and don't even think about Chicago's wonderful marketing program. But we're here to talk about Kellogg, and Kellogg actually, up until last year, the previous 3 years, had sent more candidates to finance than they had to marketing, and over the last 4 years, have sent more students to consulting than they have to marketing. And so, don't limit your perspective of the school and try to pander to a stereotype that might not exist. I did an interview with Beth Fly, the admissions director at Kellogg, early in last year, and I asked her straight up, is there, I asked with a certain, I knew the answer, but I wanted it to be out there for everyone else. I asked maybe with a touch of embarrassment, but I said to her, is there a science? Is there a way to get into Kellogg? And she gave me this quote, which I think is quite telling. I know that your audience would love for me to say yes, that there is a science in terms of getting into Kellogg. And there are days when even I wish that there was a yes to that. But I would say no. The great thing, both for applicants and for those of us in admissions, is that no person is the same. That is something I'm very conscious of with every single application I read. And I've underlined that because I think that's very important. She herself recognizes that there's no identical candidate. No typical candidate they want to see. That's a good thing. I advise people to put together the absolute best application you can. I think a big part of that, as cliched as this is going to sound, is really just being who you are, not trying to be who you think we want to read about or who we want to hear in an interview. Just be you. So if you are an excellent operations candidate, there's no point in you competing in the marketing pool if you don't have strong marketing stories. Why not be that great operations candidate? And if you are that marketing candidate, be the best marketing candidate you can be. So don't try and pander or be anything you're not. And the other thing is, we find that this is a pervasive myth. I need to constantly reinforce one story where people feel like, okay, I've got to keep saying I'm Jeremy the entrepreneur in every single essay. I need to drive this point home. And that's a losing proposition. The schools really want to learn about you. They want to understand who you are. They know you're not some sort of simple product where you have one attribute. They know that that great business leaders have many different skills. So an example I've used in the past is, Bill Gates was a remarkable innovator. He was an incredible entrepreneur. He's also a remarkable philanthropist. He actually happens to be a tremendous bridge player. If I was working with Bill Gates, I'd want him to tell the story about playing bridge. I'd want them to understand that he's got interests and passions. He's a very, very high level bridge player. I'd want them also to know about everything else. And so, don't try to become one thing and simplify your story. Offer the best of yourself, and the school will get a good sense of who you are. So before you even begin, it's really important that you stop and think about your application. Kellogg is a very demanding application. They've got 3 mandatory essays, each of which draws on many experiences, and it's really important that you really think about where your stories are going to fit. So this is based on a past applicant who was successful at Kellogg. It's a disguised example. We'll analyze this here for today's purposes. Just remember, again, you can't turn a bad idea into a good essay. So it's not an adjective contest. You shouldn't just whip through your brainstorming and say, okay, I'll just throw these essays down and I'll fix them once they get there. You really have to consider all of your stories, and that includes your personal life. And a lot of people skip over their entire personal history, and the school generally, at times it's something that is that is applicable. At times it's not. You need to really have some standout experiences. But here's an individual. Here's an individual who's an investment banker who founded the Analyst Morale Committee at his firm, who was a competitive triathlete. And his personal story has to do with his religious life. And he's not here to proselytize or offer his religious views, but as you'll find out as we go through the essays, The fact that he was dedicated to his religion is, it tells a story about himself, because it took a lot as a busy investment banker to balance being a triathlete and to balance being somewhat religious in nature. So let's take a look here. So if you can, these are the individuals. We're really simplifying this. At MBA Admission, we have a very thorough questionnaire, and we really try to get people thinking about stories, not facts. So I'm an investment banker. That's a fact. That's not a story. And it's worth saying, worth mentioning that people think, I worked on a $50 billion deal, whatever it is, that's my story. And the admissions committee isn't interested in the dollar value of a deal. You could be instrumental in a $50 million deal and have a better story than if you were a passenger on a $5 billion deal. So just keep that in mind. It's about your actions, not the deals that you're staffed on if you're an investment banker. And so, I think a lot of investment bankers worry about standing out. And you can identify those actions that enable you to do so. So here's an individual who's on a very small deal with a very uneducated seller. So the question is, I would have for this person, how did you educate an uneducated seller? In this case, were there market conditions that were difficult because this person was in the biotech field, and there's been a very volatile market, especially with new technologies in the last little while. Were there any ethical implications of dealing with this person with respect to timing? What was your internal negotiation like if the market was up and down and you had an uneducated seller? Did you develop any specialized knowledge of the field? Were there any follow-on deals that came? Did you find a way to get staffed on similar deals? These are very simple questions I would ask. You might not get a story out of each question, out of each question that we list. And again, this is one deal. You might get no stories out of this deal. You might get stories out of the next deal. You might get stories out of other aspects of your work, like analyst morale committee. So the next slide is an inventory of the stories that were generated from the single deal, from the analyst morale committee, from the triathlon, and from this individual's religious background. So the banker developed some stories from this deal on how he stood up to internal pressure to get a deal done in a difficult market. He completed teach-ins for the seller and the seller's family, and developed a profound interest in biotech. And so, this individual is not an Olympic skier. He is not, the founder of Facebook. He's just found interesting stories about his actions to tell. And then, here we go. There are a few stories from the Analyst Morale Committee. Requested a budget and, oh my God, a day off for activity at Central Park. And ran a one-day event there that boosted morale, and this one-day event developed into this committee and led to better feedback. This individual, passionate about his triathlons, was trying to compete on all the different continents and has a triathlon in Argentina coming up. Ended an Olympic triathlon, was in the middle of it, to administer first aid to a fallen bike rider. These are the things that happen to this individual that are interesting in his life. Religion. He felt like he was a bit of an outsider in the banking community, which is not one that he felt was really consistent with letting people take time off and making sure that they were in church on a weekly basis. So this he felt was like about a personal story. Again, he's not here to talk about religion or proselytize. He's here to talk about his own personal experience. So this is a mini inventory that came up from those core experiences, and I think that there'd be a lot more, but for purposes of illustration today, we've kind of simplified. So then, what we would say is, after you've stopped and thought about this, you want to try and organize your thoughts so that you can keep the admissions committee learning. You want the admissions committee, as they go along, say, okay, in Essay 1, I learned about this amazing, nascent interest in biotech and how this person is going to be a leader in this field. That's great. Now in Essay 2, the leadership essay, and we'll go into this essay in detail. We've got a lot of, I've got a lot of options here to keep the admissions committee learning. And they're going to say, wow, we're hearing about, how this individual, I've got the stars beside the ones that we'd use, completed teach-ins for a seller and a seller's family, talk about leadership, requested a budget and created a one-day event in Central Park where you got a day off from an investment bank for people to raise morale. Here's another interesting leadership story. We're consistently learning about new aspects of this person's life. Now, I've got this inventory here. You could easily, change the stars, and you could easily talk about, leadership, developing the committee from the single day off, and leading to feedback channels, or maybe personal leadership. Skipping the Olympic triathlon, the end of it, and administering first aid. Maybe that's a remarkable display of leadership. So this person's got a lot of options here. And part of the reason is because Kellogg's questions are so broad that a lot of experiences can fit. So this person, you can see that some of the options are available for both the leadership essay and for the question on evaluating applications. So you just need to make some judgments here, and you don't want to repeat specific experiences, but you can at times, offer an experience from the same environment. So if I were to tell the story of completing a teach-in, from my investment banking background, that's very different than starting a committee and getting an extracurricular event off the ground, even though they both occurred within my banking life. So you want to, again, the key here is to keep the admissions committee learning. They're engaged and they're saying, wow, the same guy who just managed to persuade the MDs to give a day off is also the guy who jumped off his bike to administer first aid, or whatever it is, balance training and triathlon, religion, etc. And so here are the remaining pieces here. The options for, there's an optional essay. These are the first three essays over here, the mandatory essays, and here's kind of what we have left. The best mistake example here, ended the triathlon to administer first aid. Maybe not the best option. Maybe forcing a square peg into a round hole. But that's okay because we've got three options for the last essays, and the star on this one is people might be surprised to learn that this individual who's got all these things going on in terms of investment banking and triathlon, etc., has had this outsider experience as well. This is just, again, this isn't the right answer. These are just the options this individual could have, and everyone will come up with different things. But I think it's really important to go through this exercise of creating this inventory and understanding where these pieces can fit for you before you make your choices. So let's go and look at the Kellogg essays in particular. So again, maybe I should have gone to this slide a little earlier, but the first question is somewhat of a typical career question. Briefly assess your career progress to date. Elaborate on your future career plans and your motivation for pursuing an MBA. Second one, describe your key leadership experiences and evaluate what leadership areas you hope to develop through your MBA experiences. The third, assume you're evaluating your application. This is always a tough one for applicants. From the perspective of a student member of the Kellogg Admissions Committee, why would you and your peers select you for admission, and what impact would you make as a member of the Kellogg community? So you have to write each one of those, and they're each 600 words, very demanding. And then you have optional questions. Complete one of the following three questions or statements, and you can choose. And there's no right choice. You can choose any one you want, and it's only 400 words. So let's look at briefly assess your career progress to date. Elaborate on your future career plans and your motivation for pursuing an MBA. I'm going to take a quick drink of water here. So the 3 parts of this essay, past, present, and future. They want to know your career progress to date. Now, you shouldn't go crazy with your career progress. I think a lot of people, they say to themselves, well, here's my big chance to tell them about my career, and they're going to want to know, they're talking about progress, they're going to want to know about every project, and they want to know about my whole every promotion, and they're really going to want to know that I've achieved something, and here's my chance to tell them straight on. They're asking about my career, and this is business school, so I'm going to tell them everything. And what we find most often, we do as a firm, we do about somewhere between 20 and 40 free ding reviews. We put an offer on our website at the end of the year for people who didn't use our services and were dinged by schools if they want to get a free ding review. We sort of feel like people have suffered enough and maybe we can help them. And we find that with Kellogg, one of the biggest mistakes people make, so please take notice, is in Essay 1, they talk entirely about their career history, and then they don't have any room to explain their goals or why Kellogg. And so the school might think you have great work history, but they just don't see your need for their school and where you're going in your life. So, please be very, very careful with that. Make sure you answer all three components, and strike a balance. Try to strike a bit of a balance. If you have 150 words on one and 250 on the other, not the end of the world. If I could err on one side, I would probably err towards the why Kellogg and goals at the expense of career progress. You don't need. They offer a 600-word limit. You don't need to worry if you go, a couple of words over. No one is counting words. The school's not going to say to you, say to themselves, we love this individual. He seems like he's going to be an amazing leader, but he's at 605 words. Forget it. We'll lose him to another school. So don't stress about it too much, but be respectful of the admissions committee's time. So we talked about the past. Let's talk about the future. Actually going back briefly, the question is elaborating your future career plans. They don't really ask about your short and long-term goals in the conventional way for Kellogg. It's a little bit more broad. You want to show that there's a logical connection to your skills, and you want to show that there's an identifiable need for you, to the best of your ability. So I think a lot of people do the first thing. When I graduate, I want to join a startup in the biotech field. I imagine myself developing as a generalist, which will enable me to launch my own ventures one day. And this doesn't show any knowledge of where this individual is going to be helpful in this field. There's not, this is very sort of vague in general. I would say a lot of goals are written in this way. The specific experience, in the next example, this individual really owns his experience. As an investment banker with a boutique firm specializing in biotechnology, I was immersed in this field and recognized that many startups are driven by a scientific rationale rather than management discipline. After completing my MBA at Kellogg, I aspire to join a biotech firm at its earliest stages in a multidisciplinary capacity, but in particular, ensuring that the appropriate venture investments are made and that through efficient uses of funds, scientific opportunity has the best chance to see the light of day. I recognize that startups need shrewd stewardship and would wear my general manager's hat as well, engaging in business development. So, this person continues, but there's no question that this individual really knows where he's going and has a passion for what he's going to do. You couldn't say that about the first example. And this individual also has carved out this need to say, look, I'm not a scientist. There are scientists there already. What this field needs is management discipline, and I have some of those skills already. I'm going to get some others at Kellogg, and I'm going to be able to jump into this field and have my impact. And then your long-term goals, and again, the school is not really asking, elaborate on your future career plan. So it doesn't need to be, so formal, but, you want to give them a sense, in my opinion, broadly of short and long-term goals. Here, I intend to build credibility in the industry, leading to vital connections with biotechnologists and financiers with the hope of launching a startup firm, or possibly even firms of my own. I recognize that biotechnology is an unpredictable field and that an element of luck must accompany management skills and science, but I'm prepared for the battle as this individual, again, understands that this is an ideal. He's not guaranteed to start up, a variety of firms. If all's going well, this is what's going to happen. This individual does not need to. You don't need to have a direct cause and effect in the field of biotechnology. This person could say, I'm going to enter the world of biotech startups, and then I'm going to move into a management at a major pharmaceutical company or a biotech company, or I'm going to start a consulting firm to scientific startups, or just to startups in general. It doesn't. Your long-term goals. You don't need to say in the short term I'm going to be a brand manager. In the long term, I'm going to be the director of marketing. In the short term, I'm going to be a consultant. In the long term, I'm going to be a partner. You don't necessarily have to suggest that you're staying with the exact same path, but there has to be a logical connection to your short-term goals. Do keep that in mind. It doesn't really make sense if you're saying, in the short term, I want to be in marketing. In the long term, I want to go into become a managing director at an investment bank. It's just that you have to keep in mind, whether your goals are plausible and plausible for you, especially during a tough economy. And maybe that's a digression away from this, but really think to yourself, are my goals credible right now? We have a lot of people who still want to say they want to enter venture capital. There are very few venture capital jobs out there. If you're someone who was a computer programmer, it's going to be very hard to make a transition with an MBA to a venture capital role. So really think through whether your goals are plausible. And then the present, why this school? Why School X? You want to explain with Kellogg or any other school exactly why you want to go to that school. The first example is a B minus, maybe even a C. Kellogg is remarkable because of its wealth of biotech healthcare resources. I'm excited to join a community of aggressive and exciting innovators. I really believe that the Health Enterprise Management program is unique and offers a depth of courses and practical offerings unmatched by other schools. If you can quickly sub in another school and say, Wharton is remarkable because of its wealth of biotech healthcare resources. I'm excited to join a community of aggressive and exciting innovators. I really believe that the Wharton healthcare program is unique and offers a depth of courses and practical offerings unmatched by other schools. You generally have a problem. It's going to be difficult. That the school is going to think to themselves, this guy just has not done his homework on us, and it's just not that compelling. So you want to get specific so that you can show the school that you really understand how, this is where I am, this is where I'm going, and Kellogg is the bridge that's going to get me there. It's not, this is where I am, this is where I'm going, and I like Kellogg, or Kellogg's a great school, or Kellogg has distinguished alumni, but this is how I'm going to use the resources at Kellogg, and distinguished alumni might be some of the resources you use, but this is how I'm going to use the resources at Kellogg in order to facilitate my career goals. So what appeals to me about the Health Enterprise Management major is that I can delve into traditional management offerings at a high level while engaging in the pure science at the beginner level where I admittedly currently stand. The science bootcamp and science tutorials will ensure that I'm conversant in the language of the field and will prepare me for the advanced courses that will be crucial to my success as a manager in the sophisticated field. Considering my career interests, I'm looking forward to intellectual capital management and medical innovation in particular, where I gain an unprecedented view into the innovation life cycle. I would also seize the opportunity to join the Global Health Initiative. So this is this individual has done his homework, understands you couldn't just throw in Wharton here and have this work. These examples are very specific to Kellogg, and that's what's going to make the difference for you, and is going to make the school understand that that you have really done your homework and want to be there. So moving on, describe your key leadership experiences. Evaluate what leadership areas you hope to develop through your MBA experiences. So for this essay, this individual had the options of completing teach-ins for the seller and the seller's family, and requested a budget and got a day off for an activity at their park. And could use both of these, key leadership experiences, and evaluate what leadership areas you hope to develop. So you want to tell the story of your leadership experience by giving examples. You don't want to just tell the school that you were a leader. I was a great leader because I was able to request a budget and gain that budget for an activity in Central Park. We don't know how you've done anything. I was a great leader because I led teach-ins for the seller and the seller's family. There's nothing engaging. We don't understand. We don't understand how you've done things, what your activities were. So you don't want to be laudatory. You want to be somewhat critical of your own experiences. I think one of the big mistakes that we see, if you look at the don'ts, people arrive at an unsubstantiated conclusion. So they'll say, I was a great leader, I did everything perfectly. There's no critical evaluation during the essay, and thus the conclusion of how one would want to develop in an MBA is just completely out of the blue. And so we don't understand, there's no context for this person saying, I would like to develop my communication skills because throughout the entire essay, his communication skills are fantastic. So you shouldn't shy away from being honest about your experiences, and then you should really offer clear examples of where you can develop at Kellogg. The school is asking you, where do you hope to develop through your MBA experiences? And again, you can show knowledge of the school. Do the fill in the blank test again. Say, am I revealing knowledge of where I'm going to develop at Kellogg, or am I just offering some bland comments like, I'll develop my teamwork skills at Kellogg because the school is known for its team orientation. That's not going to do it for you. You're going to have to you have to offer specifics of the resources. So one thing people always say to me when I say you have to tell the story is they'll say, but I have so few words. How can I possibly develop 2 complete stories in 600 words and offer a conclusion? So here I've created a 200-word story, and you definitely have space for a narrative. And a narrative is what's going to draw the reader into your story. So just saying, I was a great advisor to a family that was uneducated because I did teach-ins isn't the same, in my opinion, as saying this. Just glancing at Stephen, sitting in our boardroom in shorts and a plaid shirt, I knew that he was not the typical seller. While Stephen had built BTG Biotech, does that sound familiar? BTG, be the GMAT, a little tribute to our friends who are hosting us, biotech into a powerhouse in the niche ABC drug field. He did so through innovation, not financial engineering. I could not help but wonder whether Stephen truly knew the value of his company. When an early, unsolicited offer came across our desk at $30 million, Stephen was overwhelmed. I had a lump in my throat as I told his family that the offer was low. I thought, this is real money. What if the buyer walks? Despite some impatience from my managing director, I took a day to prepare a Finance 101 course for Stephen and his family. I spent the weekend taking them through elementary valuation, explaining concepts like precedent transactions with biotech examples. Stephen soon saw that the offer was $8 million below a fair range and agreed to let us market the deal. While it took close to a year, and Stephen and his family grew quite upset with our team at times, and we almost lost the mandate, our team ultimately sold BTG for $42 million, which was more of a relief than a victory. And this is a disguised example. This is not some fantastic story. This is based on a client well in the past and is definitely disguised. But again, it's not the dollar values that are interesting, it's the individual's action, and the individual draws you in through his narrative. And he's not afraid to leave himself a little exposed here. And Steve and his family grew quite upset with our team at times. This person took a risk and said, don't take this deal. And we almost lost the mandate. And our team ultimately sold BTG for $42 million. So, the idea in showing that this person had some vulnerabilities is that he can talk about the areas that he hopes to develop through his MBA. Maybe this person could have, like my example before, could have communicated better, could have maintained constant contact with the family and made them aware. Maybe he lost contact. There's a connection to the conclusion. If this individual had just told the story about how he ran this great, this fantastic educational program, and then they closed the deal and refused to mention there were any, blips along the way, and said, I could have been a better communicator, and that's what I hope to develop at Kellogg, it wouldn't have made any sense. So we really want people to develop their narratives. It's not a panacea. You're not going to get in if you tell a story, but this draws the reader in and enables them to understand your actions. And that's what good writing is really about, and that's, in our opinion, how you can maintain the attention of the reader who reads hundreds, if not thousands, of these things. Assume you're evaluating your application from the perspective of a student member of the admissions committee. Why would you and your peers select you for admission, and what impact would you make as a member of the Kellogg community? I'm just going to take another drink, guys. So this person could choose, some examples. Stood up to internal pressure to get a deal done in a difficult market. Was active, ran this committee, ended Olympic triathlon. These are representative examples of the type of person that this individual is. And this, for you, your examples could be, widely different. Wildly different. This is what this individual has, and you can take whatever approach you want to this. You can start in third person. You can start in first person. You can talk about your criteria for evaluation at the beginning. There are all sorts of different ways of structuring this essay. But the idea is that they're not just getting a survey of you. You're not just going to get a review of your transcript or a review of your GMAT score. That's what the admissions committee is actually going to do. You don't need to make them aware of the basics of your application. I can see that this person worked for 2 years in consulting. This is an opportunity for you to add value and add insight. And you can approach this with a suspended disbelief. You can approach this and say, okay, they don't need to have actually learn this. I can say, looking back on Steve's interview or whatever, we'll pick someone different from our example, looking back on John's interview, I was impressed by the story of A, B, and C. You can take some creative license here to allow them to understand stories about who you are. But the idea is that you want to incorporate stories about your character, who you are, and where you can really add value to the community instead of the minimums of your transcript, your GMAT. This is not the place to say to the admissions committee, I'm better than my grades, I'm better than my GMAT. You want to show that you can really add something to the class. And then again, what impact would you make as a member of the Kellogg community? You're gonna, again, the same fill in the blank test. You need to tell a story and connect it. These are some of the areas where we can see this person making his contribution. And so, you don't want to just say, I can see this person being a great team player, or, this person is going to be, is a great candidate for the Global Health Initiative or something like that, but try and add color that shows so you can reveal that you know what you're talking about when it comes to the school. Complete one of the following 3 questions or statements. Now, I found that people have wanted to do A always. Describe an instance where you encounter resistance in a professional or team setting. How did you address the situation? It is an MBA program, but you don't need to constantly be presenting yourself as a manager. If you do have a good story about resistance, okay. But you don't need to show that story about resistance. And you have to show a very sharp conflict and resolve it quickly. You've got 400 words here, so that you have to really get to the heart of that resistance. And you need to show that you acted. It didn't resolve itself, but that you acted to resolve this situation. And I apologize, I forgot to put the example here. But say the example of the pressure to get a deal to market. If this person stood up and said, look, it's not the time, and stood up for his client, that would be a good example of resistance in a professional team setting. And people may be surprised to learn that. I mean, this is such a broad question. They're wonderful. It's a wonderful opportunity for you to show a lot of personality. So this individual, might say, that he might bring in his religion again. Not to preach, proselytize, but to talk about how people might be surprised that this hard-driving banker / triathlete takes time to sneaks out of work, or has the approval of work, should I say, but discreetly, goes and attends to his religious practice. The idea that, I'm an accountant, but I also do training at our accounting firm, that's not a surprise that an accountant does training. There needs to be a pretty sharp relief. I'm an accountant and a salsa instructor. That's a pretty different, you don't expect every accountant's going to be a salsa instructor. This is surprising. There needs to be a surprise there. We need to learn something new about you. And then the best mistake I ever made was, again, I said at the beginning, this wasn't really an example that this person could have used because it was forcing a square peg into a round hole. But usually you want to reveal that you've taken a risk, maybe even at an all-out failure. But the learning is the key. They want to know that you learned, and people have a tendency to try and disguise failures or avoid taking responsibility, and you really have to take responsibility if this essay is going to work for you. There's no point in choosing this essay about a mistake and then trying to say, I didn't make a mistake. You're setting yourself up for failure overall, whether you say, okay, this person isn't mature. So I certainly wouldn't answer this question if you're not comfortable admitting a mistake, but you should be entirely comfortable revealing that you've made mistakes in your life. So with that, actually, I think this actually brings us to the end. And that's a good thing, because I think that I'm happy to stay on a little late. I know we started a little bit late, but I want to give time for questions. So just a few things about MBA Admissions. I mentioned at the beginning that we're really a team of elite communicators. I was a professional speechwriter. Lynn Maloney, who's on staff, was an editor at Inc. and Fast Company magazines. Deb Fryer, who's on staff, wrote 16 Harvard Business School cases before going to Wharton herself. Everyone here has MBA experience at a top school and as an elite communicator. We're here to help you express yourself. One thing I think is quite different from us, vis-a-vis a lot of other firms, is we're not a website. We're a real firm. We have a team. Our team is on our website. We're overwhelmingly a full-time team, people who do this for this is what they do as a profession. We have an internal staff conference. We have a weekly team meeting and training meeting. We are publishing a book, actually. We have a book we have books on our website right now. We have Insider's Guides to 14 Schools. We have our Complete Start to Finish Guide on our website, and we have one that's actually coming out that's going to Barnes & Noble, and you can order it on Amazon.com right now. And, we are actually a firm. This is what we do. We have a lot of external validation. We've been Manhattan GMAT used to work with 10 different firms. They now work with us. If you go to Admissions 411, I think any firm with any sort of respectable number of responses, we are the highest rated firm. We don't offer arbitrary success rates. A lot of firms out there say, got a 95% success rate, and there's nothing validating that success rate. And there's really, it's not something that we want to be in a position where we're willing to help people take risks as opposed to protect the success rate that's going to deter them from taking risks. I mentioned we're already working for you. We've done a lot of research. We offer all of our package clients Insider's Guides for free and the Complete Start to Finish Guide for free. Several members of our team have admissions experience and have done admissions interviews as well. We have a lot of free resources out there. We have our blog, events like this. We do events all the time. I think that we offer our books for free to our own candidates. So I think we really offer a lot to establish our credibility. I'm not going to go too deep into this. We always offer a free consultation. So if you want a free consultation, there'll be a link at the end of the presentation, and then we can go through how we work with people as they call, because I think time is short. Here are a few examples of members of our team. You look at Monica Carpenter-Okra. She went to Harvard Business School. It's not enough to have gone to Harvard Business School to be on the MBA admission team. She wrote a book on how to write successful Harvard Business School application essays. She's an author. You look at, we'll go through this quickly. I mentioned Deb Fryer, who wrote 16 Harvard Business School cases and actually has written an ethics book. Angela Guido she went to Chicago Booth, where she was the Siebel Scholar and a member of the Dean Students Admissions Committee. But she managed the Yale record when she was at Yale. She wrote for Asian economic publications. She actually also did some research and writing for the book Treasure Hunt, which was a business bestseller. So this is the kind of individual you get at MBA admission. We really believe that every candidate has a unique story to tell, and we definitely have the creative experience to help you tell yours. So, if you're interested, we offer a free consultation. Our partners from Manhattan GMAT offer a free CAT exam, and we offer a lot of free time to people. A lot of people signed up after the last event, so it could take a couple of days to get everyone processed and get everyone organized and scheduled. But if you'll bear with us, by early in the next week, you should have your free consultation scheduled. We have a very clever little online scheduler where you can pick your own time. So that's that. I guess I'll turn it back over to the BTG team, and we can take questions. And like I said, to the extent that everyone's comfortable, spending a little bit more time, so am I.
Great. Well, thank you so much. And again, for those of you who have just joined us, we're speaking with Jeremy Scheinwald, who is the founder of MBA Admission and an MBA Admissions Expert. And we're discussing Kellogg. We just saw a great Kellogg presentation by Jeremy where he broke down each essay. And now's the time to ask your questions. So that being said, I see a number of good questions coming in right now. One question coming in from Zoom Theorist on Twitter, and he is asking, or she is asking about essay number 4, and particularly the essay around, I believe it was, one thing that you may not know about me, or along those lines. But the essence of the question is, how do you approach things like using examples of a personal struggle, or maybe even a personal tragedy? Are those, in the end, this is something that I've been interested in too, Jeremy, is are those kinds of examples ever deemed as too sappy, or is there sort of an appropriate way to deal with tragedies or personal struggles, because they can be really transformative to you?
Right. I think there always is room for the personal. There's always room to consider the personal. That was my point in bringing in the individual's religious background. I think that there can be you can read 10 essays in a row on a tragedy, a death in the family or something like that, and view them as being cliched, and then you can read one, and it can almost bring you to tears. It really has to do with the personal nature of it, and you have to use a lot of judgment in terms of what you share and how you share it, and how it reveals its impact on you. So it's hard to offer general advice without knowing the specifics of your circumstance. But I would say don't rule it out. Mm-hmm. Personal stories often are stories where you can offer something about yourself that no one else can offer, or that very, very few can offer, and often no one else can offer. And I think it can be a really interesting window into your values and character. So again, I can't tell you, I can't give you the green light with your specific story. I don't know it, but I wouldn't totally shy away from it. But there is bad sharing. One of the tests that I always give is this the type of thing that you would offer someone if you met them and had a 10-minute conversation? So, if a school asks you about a mistake, and you offered information about how you weren't a great husband and got divorced or something like that, that's the type of thing you'd probably bring up in casual conversation upon meeting someone for the first time. And you're effectively meeting these people for the first time through your essays. So that might be a good test for whether your story works or not. Is this the type of thing you would share with a stranger if it just happened to come up in conversation?
Right. I've had a very similar piece of advice I've been giving people for years, which is think of it as a blind date. What are you going to reveal on that blind date the first time is whatever you feel comfortable revealing is probably game. Otherwise, you may want to leave some of the other baggage that is so negative for later on. So a question though about being personal. So how far back can you go in terms of your own life to draw from personal examples for your essays?
That's a tricky question. I think generally, we want to understand the contemporary mature you. If there's something that happened that was really transformative, that has power, there's probably room for it. I would really exercise caution in terms of using stories that are more than a couple of years old. Something that happened to you during your teen years, maybe as the introduction for the impetus to do something in your life, possible, but I don't want to blanket say no, because some personal experiences can be really, really powerful. Mm-hmm. But certainly be careful in terms of going too far back and offering something that doesn't reflect the you that you are today.
Right. See a new question coming in from a person named Mosquito7758 from AOL. And this question is, do you have any advice for reapplicants on how much to change your essays the second time around?
Yeah, I think you want to keep things fresh. I mean, if you've had some remarkable standout achievement, if I were writing this year or last year, I'd still be quite proud of starting MBA Admission and growing it to become a force in the admissions consulting field. So that's not something that I would necessarily say, okay, well, they already know that. I can't discuss MBA Admission at all because they got that last year. I think that you have to change things up, keep things fresh. Show some growth and development. There is a reapplicant essay which you have to answer to help reveal that growth and development. So it's a bit of a balancing act. You want to keep things fresh. You want to maybe offer a new perspective, but the school's going to recognize that you're not an entirely different individual this year.
Mm-hmm. And sort of related to that, and this is not a question specific to reapplicants, but what are your thoughts about recycling essays? So if I'm applying to multiple schools, many of these questions, why an MBA, for example, maybe you may be able to reuse some of that content you created before. What is your sort of general philosophy on reuse?
sorry, are you saying from one year to the other? You're saying,
I'm sorry,
from one school to the other?
I'm sorry, I was specifically talking about one school to the other.
Well, I mean, you have to be very, very careful. I mean, very, very careful. I think that everything should be viewed with a fresh perspective always. I mean, that said, if you have some content that can work from one school to the other, you shouldn't just start from scratch just because it's a dangerous proposition. I mean, if it is a really, really great fit, so be it. I mean, INSEAD asks, what are your 2 greatest accomplishments? Harvard asks, what are your 3 greatest accomplishments? There's some obvious overlap there. But if a school's asking, talk about a failure, and another school's talking about a mistake, those aren't the same 2 things, and you shouldn't just copy and paste. So I'd be very, very careful about copying and pasting. And the other thing also is that sometimes people copy and paste, and it's a shortcut. But maybe just because the question is the same, it doesn't mean that the answer needs to be the same.
Right.
You might have a well done answer about a mistake, but there might be different opportunities at a different school, and you might say, well, I still need them to hear about, how I initially had that experience getting my analyst morale day off the ground, and I did make some mistakes along the way in terms of persuading people at the beginning, and that's a story that I want them to hear about, so that maybe I'll use this for my mistake essay for this other school, even though I have a perfectly good mistake essay already, which I don't feel to be as powerful. So a lot of caution with copying and pasting.
Right. And one thing to note too is, I got this advice once from another admissions consultant, which was, don't assume that, or rather, you should assume that the admissions officers are reading each other's essays. So they will be able to pick out sort of language that seems specific to another application. So we're talking to Jeremy Scheinwald, founder of MBA Admission, and he's taking your questions with regard to Kellogg MBA, the MBA application. I see another question coming in from Twitter. Naveen is asking, what is the time outlook for long-term goals essay? So I assume he means, how far out should you look?
I don't think there is a time horizon there that's standard. I mean, again, you look at a school like Kellogg, which discuss your future career plans. They're not saying discuss your 5-year plan, your 10-year plan, your 15-year plan. You want to give a sense in your short-term goals that you've got some vision and direction for where you're going, and your long-term goals are kind of like an ideal. Like if everything worked out along the way, this is where I would be. This is where I would end up. This is what I would aspire to do. And I think the schools know that your long-term goals are going to change dramatically, and that you're going to go to school and you're going to hopefully explore some of your short-term goals even, and seize that opportunity. So it's the message that's more important than the time frame. You want to show that you really have put some thought into this, and that you've got some exciting vision. And if it's a 5-year vision, a 10-year vision, in my example today, there was no number of years attached. It was just like, hey, this is where I see my career going, and that's probably sufficient.
Yeah, and I asked this question in a previous session actually, which was, it's kind of interesting because, and Jeremy, this is actually apropos to you because you're in the same conference that I was at when we were discussing this, which was, it seems that there's a story that applicants present for admissions, and then there's actually what happens. So the hypothesis was that very few people who actually do what they write, and admissions officers sort of, like I guess the question specific to Kellogg is, is there some sort of just assumption of, well, they have a compelling story now, but we're comfortable assuming that it's going to change later on in reality. I don't know whether you have any thoughts about, I guess, that sort of.
Yeah, I think the schools will, read your goals with a grain of salt. They want to know that you're the type of person who's doing homework, who has some vision for where you're going. At the same time, they also, recognize that things might change, and they want to be there to help facilitate that change if it happens. Mm-hmm. So, no one's going to hold you to your career goals and say, okay, you must enter a biotech startup. But they want to know that you've got a lot of purpose and energy, and it's something that might seem a little bit silly, and I think, and for that reason, that's why Harvard has made their career vision essay an option, because what they're basically saying is, if you're really, really passionate about something and think that it makes a statement about you and where you're going in your life, offer it to us. If you don't really know where you're going, it's not the end of the world. We can manage that as long as you have a core personality and core skills that are going to enable you to succeed in anything you follow.
Right. Okay, I think we have time for just a couple more questions here. This is an interesting semantics question, actually, by Lavinia from Facebook. Is there a difference between a failure and a mistake?
Yeah, there is. A failure is something where, if a school says discuss a mistake you've made or a failure you've had, I think that right there in my sentence, I think it says it all. A mistake you've made. I mean, you have ownership over a mistake. The mistake is something where you're at fault. You can fail at something, and it isn't necessarily your fault. You can have a failure or a setback where you can talk about how things didn't work out due to external circumstances, and I guess mistake is failure. Encapsulates mistake, but offers a little bit more of an opportunity to shirk responsibility. I mean, mistake is much more narrow, and I think that the schools are they're looking for responsibility either way. Most likely, it depends on the question that's being asked. But setbacks and failures, there can be external circumstances which come into play.
Right. Another question coming in from Twitter, from Zoom Theorist, actually. So this is with regard to essay question number 3. He wanted to get your thoughts about writing that essay from the voice of pretending that you were actually on the admissions committee and not from the perspective of an applicant.
Sure. Yeah. I mean, I think third person, first person, it doesn't really matter. You can say, I as a member of the admissions committee, I sat down and reviewed this file. I probably wouldn't start that way because I think it's a little bit typical. But you can definitely evaluate it. What's most important is the content as opposed to the style. I mean, like I said, we've had people in the past who've taken very innovative approaches to this and established their own criteria for someone, for what they're looking for in a candidate, and have responded to each criteria. We had someone quite a long time ago who did a Q&A for this. They used to have this question many years ago, and they just brought it back. Did a Q&A type situation where they asked questions and had response. I mean, there are all sorts of different ways that you can do this, but it's the content that's the most important, and that's the case always.
Great. Yep. Okay, I think this is the last question that we have before we should wrap up today. See a number of questions about this, about gaps. So either gaps in time off you took during school or time off you took from work. The questions coming in aren't really specific about what was the nature of these gaps, but how do you sort of tell that story, I think, in your application when there does appear to be times that you voluntarily or perhaps involuntarily left work? Yeah.
I think of course it depends on the nature of the gap. I mean, some people will take a year off after college to go travel, or some people will face a layoff as opposed to being dismissed, or some people will take time off work and pursue a passion or a hobby. As long as there's purpose in what you do, you should be just fine. So even if you've been laid off, if you made the most of your time, you don't need to worry that much about the school, judging your layoff and saying, oh, this person was laid off. Well, you could never be a Kellogg type. I mean, you've got an extensive record of achievement before you, and that it should stand on its own for a period of time at least. If you've done absolutely nothing, if you took your time off to watch football and lie on the couch and drink beer, and you did that for a year, obviously it's not going to help you. But you're going to want to approach any sort of break through an optional essay and just explain, the circumstances and what you did. And the admissions committee doesn't need to feel like you're on a constant increasing trajectory professionally in order to accept you at Kellogg. If you took a year off to travel the world, that there is value. They're human beings. They'll recognize that that they're probably going to admire it. They might not have done it themselves. There is some personal growth that is valued by the admissions committee. Or if you took some time off to pursue a passion, an art or a small business, whatever it is, that's just fine. It's really all about what you do and just communicate what you did with your time. The admissions committee doesn't like mysteries. They don't like to excuse me. They don't like to come. Excuse me. Maybe this time we wrap up. They don't like to. They don't like to draw their own conclusions at the end. They want you to just tell them what happened in a straightforward way and understand it.
Great. Well, very solid advice, fantastic presentation, and great answers. We are speaking with Jeremy Scheinwald, founder of MBA Mission. Actually, Jeremy, before we really wrap up, I heard that you actually have a book that's going to be published in the next 5 days. Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
We've been. It's, I guess, in some ways the third edition of our complete start to finish guide, and it's got chapters on everything from long-term planning. So if you're planning years out, to hopefully someone on this call is that kind of proactive individual, to what I think is an excellent chapter on essay construction and essay writing, a separate chapter on personal statements, like specifically the why school X, what are my goals. We have a chapter on optional essay statements. The example is very much. The book is very much example laden, and it's very much a how-to. It's got a lot of very practical advice in terms of how to construct your application. It's not something that is broad and theoretical. It's very, very practical, and we're really thrilled to be. MG Prep is publishing it, and Simon & Schuster is distributing it, and we're pleased with the advance orders from Amazon and Barnes & Noble, and it's a real feather in our cap. We're very proud of the book, and check it out. Wonderful.
Great. Well, congratulations on the upcoming publication. I can't wait to read it myself, actually. This was the Kellogg session featuring Jeremy Scheinwald, the founder of MBA Mission. Just in case we couldn't reach your questions during this live session today, you can actually go to two places to get an MBA Mission person to respond to you. One is directly at mbamission.com. There's a number of resources there to help you get started or get through your MBA application this season or next season. Lots of resources there. Highly recommend that you reach out to Jeremy and his team. And also in the Beat the GMAT forums, Jeremy and his team actually have an Ask MBA Mission area of the website. So you can direct your questions that you had here to an MBA Mission expert who's currently on the site. So that being said, Jeremy, thanks again for your time. Appreciate your coming out despite and weathering the sickness to speak with us today.
Thanks so much for having me. I really enjoyed these. They're great events, and I think it's our last one, but we'll look to do more next year. And really great series. It's one of a kind right now.
Great. Well, thanks, and we'll count on that too to try to do another event like this in the future. So thanks again to MBA Mission, and to the Beat the GMAT community. Highly encourage you to come back at 10 a.m. PST tomorrow for our next session, which is Wharton. All the best and see you soon.